On today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet, an island that doesn't exist and some trees that almost went out of existence. And they all have a similar sounding name. And I'll sort out that confusion today. And also, since, to paraphrase John Donne, no one is an island in itself, we'll ask the cards to help us think about the interconnectedness of it all. I'm John Paulus, and you're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet only on YouTube. All right, so where to begin? Let's start with Phantom Islands. So a Phantom Island is an island that doesn't exist, but people have claimed to have seen it or to know about its existence. There's some interesting examples of Phantom Islands all the way up to about 10 years ago, where an island in the South Pacific called Sandy Island, which had been reported by ships since the 1700s, was finally declared to not be an island after extensive searching for the island in the place that it was charted. And it got stuck into the charts. It even got put on Google Maps because of the charts that were used as references for Google Maps until 2012, when finally it was declared by organizations around the world not to be an island, and therefore not to be on maps such as National Geographic. And that island, Sandy Island, may have been, it turns out, some people think, a phenomenon of pumice flows that were spotted in that channel where the island was supposed to be, where there apparently that in that area pumice flows are common from volcanic activity. So perhaps that's the reason, or perhaps it was nothing was ever spotted and it was just a mirage. That certainly happens. And that has happened in many places around the world. There's an island that was purported to be part of Japan that the Japanese couldn't find, and that was originally spotted by an American whaling ship centuries ago, but apparently there was nothing to spot there. And they, in the 20th century, sent out an expedition to see, can we find this island or any account of it? And they couldn't find it. So eventually they came to the idea that this can't be found, so let's just say that it's not known whether this exists or not. The reason these islands stay on charts is because if there is an island there, you want to make sure that it's on the map so that ships know, so they can navigate around the island. So it's one of those better safe than sorry situations. Now, one of these famous non-island islands is a phantom island of High Brazil, or Brazil. And this has caused a lot of confusion over the centuries because there are a lot of folks who say, well, that Brazil, the country, Brazil, was named after this island that was originally reported in legends to be off the coast of Ireland. And for centuries, this Phantom Island was obviously never found, since there was no island where it was said to be. But maps still had it on there, and legends grew around it as to its appearance and disappearance, and you can't get to it even if you see it, and that kind of thing, which makes a lot of sense in the lure of an island that doesn't exist. Because in case you do see something, The legend knows that the island doesn't exist, so it wants to tell the story of how you're not going to be able to get to that island even if you happen to see it because it's a phantom. But nevertheless, the connection between the country of Brazil and its name and the name of the island, High Brazil or just Brazil on some of the old maps, continued to be a strain of alternative explanation for the name of the country Brazil. Even people like J.R.R. Tolkien of Lord of the Rings fame had times when he would connect Brazil, but it may have been just a playful thing. And certainly, there are elements of Lord of the Rings that he drew from the High Brazil legends, apparently. So that is interesting as well. But nonetheless, the country of Brazil gets its name from something that exists but was almost a phantom. So the opposite of the phantom island. And this is a tree. So the country of Brazil gets its name from what is called in Portuguese, pau Brasil, which is a Brazil wood. Or sometimes it's called Pernambuco wood from the place name in Brazil. And in the ancient Tupi language of the area, the name was Ibirapitanga. Now, the reason this was called Brazil wood by Portuguese language speakers originally was that it had a red dye in it. And that red dye could be used instead of the red dye of what at the time or earlier in the Middle Ages had been called Brazil wood and related to the words for a coal or an ember or brazier, which is a bright red dye that came from a wood in Malaysia. It's also present in Indonesia. And that wood was what was called Brazil wood at the time for that reason, because it was from words related to ember, and that redness of it suggested that. So it was actually saying that this was, in a sense, the Brazil dye wood, because it was just like that wood that was coming from the places in Southeast Asia that were supplying the world with this particular red dye. It's sapan wood, and that comes from a Malay term, sapang, which is the name of the tree. And so that sapan wood had a serious competitor in this pau Brasil that was found in what is now the country Brazil. And in fact, until very recently, in the grand scheme of things, scientists thought they were from the same genus of tree, but now that genus has been separated out into different genus for those trees. And so the trees were so over harvested for that dye, the trees in Brazil, that they almost became extinct. And so the Brazilian government has strong controls on those trees, which are endangered, because even though artificial dyes and other types of natural dyes have replaced the Brazil wood dye, 300 years ago, stringed instrument bow makers in Europe and around the world started to use the heartwood, the very small core wood, very red, of the Brazil wood to make the perfect bows. It had just the right properties, just the right straightness, just the right flexibility and stiffness. It just was perfect and still is perfect for bows. And even to this day, Brazil is preventing illegal trade of Brazilian heartwoods, Brazil wood heartwood, going out of Brazil. And Patricia da Rosa is a person who is engaged in a survey of all of the existing Brazilwood trees that there are to be found. And this is a long task, and apparently she'll be finished by 2025. She's going to make a survey of how many are left, and they're hoping to find that there are more than they think, but they're worried that they might find that there are fewer than they think. And so this is a tree that almost disappeared. So let's ask the cards in honor of the work of Patricia de Rosa and in the knowledge that no one is an island, and especially not a phantom island. Let's ask the cards for some advice. So, yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles. Cards, tell us some things. All right. Let's see, what is the most prominent card? Oh, here we go. It's card 13. Think of your work life as a pie. Think of each aspect of your life as a piece of a pie of a different flavor. Your family work, your paid work, your hobbies, your volunteer work, your self-care work, etc. Now, say what the largest slice of your pie is right now and what you want it to be in 2025 when Patricia da Rosa will be done with that survey of the Brazilwood trees in Brazil. And think about how all of our lives and all of your life is connected. And let's reconnect tomorrow right here on Life's Potluck Buffet.